Live again. Thank you, Deb. Native American, it's best to do history or old photos. Yeah, that's what I thought. Perhaps go back to sort of 1800s type photos to get unwatered down versions, because I'm sure with all the history and everything, there was probably quite a lot of messing with the gene pool, as it were, from the American soldiers or English soldiers. Hi, YouTube. I'm sorry. I forgot you again. We're here, Kath. I'm sorry. Deb just let me know I'd forgotten to set the stream. I will put the whole video up in the group anyway, but we've just been discussing these ladies and what races they are and everything. And we're looking at, obviously, face shape plays a big part in determining someone's ethnicity. If you've ever looked at skull reconstruction from archaeology or true crime, you'll know that the markers on the skull, thicknesses of skin, etc., and muscles fall into a basic pattern, if you like. So you can get a very good idea of what somebody should look like based on their skull, because it's simply a case of putting in markers at the right depth. Since skull shapes change from individuals, it stands to reason that therefore they also change dramatically between ethnic races. So you'd have, for instance, you've got Korean faces and other Asian faces tend to be quite childish looking. They have a very short nose to chin. They tend to be very rounded. They tend to be very rosy, very rounded cheeked. Whereas Indian girls and Persian girls, they all have very defined cheekbones. That's something that stands out with them. African-American girls have something very particular that actually relates to what we're talking about here, that singles them out as being, I'm going to use the term black for want of a better way of describing all of the girls, like this girl and this girl and this girl and this girl. Their eyes. Okay. What is it about the eyes that you think particularly makes somebody look like they might be of a particular race? Because remember, we're not going on colour here. We're trying to ignore colour, which is very difficult when you're doing race, and I understand that. But we're just going to try and look at these as if they are, let's pretend they all have white skin. You would still single that lady out and say she doesn't look like generic white girl. The shape and the way the skin folds over them, yes. So the eye sockets in particular are one way of determining race. The shape of the eye socket, for instance, Chinese and that area, in all cases, when I say a particular race, I mean and that area, because it tends to be regional rather than specifically race related. Chinese eyes tend to flick up at the corners, whereas Japanese have, I think they call it hooded lids, where, I mean, you can see it with me, I have very deep set eyes, but with a Japanese girl, she wouldn't have this bit. Her eyes would be more like that. So you wouldn't see, can you see the difference there, where it's almost like it's been pulled down like that at the corners? And that is because the muscles have grown in such a way around the shape of the eye that her eyes are being pulled down like that at the corners. Korean girls, they tend to have, and Thai girls tend to have the longer slit. So their eyes are being pulled that way. So they tend to have a very thin but very long opening in the eye. You have the heavy lidded eyes of Japan and that area. Chinese girls tend to have the heavy lid, but they're also being pulled upwards this way. So they have that kind of flick. Like, I always describe it as like the cat eye flick that us girls all try to get with our eyeliner. Chinese girls have it naturally. It's beautiful. They've got this like cat eye appearance because they flick up at the edge. Women who are described as black tend to have oval eyes. They're much, much rounder than, well, like if you look at mine and Risha's, I mean, we have rounded eyes. They tend to be quite flat at the top, rounded at the bottom. Cody has the same. Hers are flat at the top, rounded at the bottom. Unless we're actually going like that, our eyes look quite small in our faces. Black women tend to have very large eyes. Their eyes are their biggest feature. But funnily enough, and I've researched this one because I was interested, because you know when you're born, your eyes are the only thing that don't grow. Your eyes are the size that they are your whole life. I didn't know that, but it's true. Your eyes, the only thing that don't grow. Or your eyeballs, rather, not your eyes themselves. Your eyeballs are the size that they will always be when you're born. And in various different races, the eyeball can be a different size, but in black women and generic white women, I mean, you know, there is no such thing as a generic white woman any more than there's a generic black woman, but you know what I mean. Our eyeballs are almost identical. So what is it about a black woman's face that makes her eyes look so big? Cody, I can't make out what you're saying, sorry.
I don't have my mic on. I was letting somebody else answer, but usually their eyes are set outward. They tend to be...
They look like it, yeah.
Yeah.
What they used to very unkindly call bug-eyed.
Yes.
Where you look constantly surprised. Yeah, they do have that look. But why do they have that look? Asian eyes have a straight... Oh, here we go. Eye expert, Risha. Our local, what is she, ophthalmologist student? Asian eyes have a straight muscle structure, where Caucasian eyes have a break in the muscle that creates the crease in the lid. Thank you. I didn't know that. So literally here, we have two muscles, they only have one. So it stands to reason that they would have one large area of lid, whereas we have a bit of a broken lid because we've got two muscles working at different ways. That's interesting. I didn't know that. So you pick up all sorts of new things in these classes. What is it about a black woman's face? Let's talk about this lady here. What is it about her face that makes her eyes stand out so much? Because it's not just an optical illusion caused by the whites of her eyes against her black skin. If you put white face powder on her, you would still be able to identify her as a black woman. Because there's something about her face structure that's very specific. I'll give you a clue. It has nothing to do with her eyes. Oh, goes everybody. What? Let me put you out of your misery. The reason that, I'm just going to use the back of the paper. The reason that white people eyes tend to look deep set in the face, whereas black people eyes tend to come out. And I'm using those generic terms because it's a class. I don't have time to be messing around with politically correct language. So I'm just distinguishing black versus white. I think we all know what I'm talking about in terms of what kind of face I mean. A white person's face, you've got the brow ridge, you've got the nose, then you have the lips in whatever form, and you have the chin. So the eyes are here in a very defined socket. So straight away you would go, oh yeah, that's where the brow is and that's where the socket is. Now, if you looked at a black woman from the same angle, what you'll notice is that they have the exact same structure here, but their nose does that. And because they don't have that defined brow ridge here, which when their eyes are like that would be, you know, this bit that we all like to draw and shade in, they don't have that. Their nose it's almost as if they don't have cartilage in their nose to about here. So their eyes are set nearer here. So this area here and this area here are very different. A black woman's eyes, the brow ridge there is very, very short. Whereas here, you know, if it's somebody like me, I've got a huge nose sticking out that actually goes up and down because I'm Romany. They got the big nose, got the big Roman nose. So my nose actually goes outwards. Theirs comes down and then scoops outwards, and it tends to be bulbous at the bottom. Whereas an Asian woman's nose will tend to be triangular at the bottom. Okay, so that is what makes the eyes look bigger, is because literally they are missing, see this bit here? This big bone here. They don't have it. It's not there. Why a lot of black people struggle with wearing glasses, or they tend to wear glasses down the nose like that, because they don't have this handy little notch to stick their glasses on. So if you don't have that there, what's going to be most prominent? Your eyes are going to be most prominent in your face, because this is not sticking out as far. You'll also see it in some of the Asian women have it, not all of them. Don't class all Asian women together. The Vietnamese girl and anyone who is Chinese or Japanese, or this Thai girl, obviously she's younger, so it might be that she's just not fully developed. This girl here, look at her tiny, cute little button nose. She has the most adorable little button nose. And yet she's not a child. She's a teenager at least. She's also Korean, so she could be 30, because they don't seem to age. They go from 10 to 50. And there's nothing in between. They either look like they're 10 years old or they're 50 years old. I don't know how they do it. Whereas this girl is also Korean, but she has a very defined brow ridge like a white person. So it could be that she's not pure Korean. You know, again, she's old enough to be of that age where there were foreign soldiers in her area, sadly. So there's always something to look out for. But like these girls here, the Indian girls, have an even more defined brow ridge. They literally have, I mean, this Indian lady here, and obviously the nose keeps growing. This Indian lady here has my kind of nose, where it literally hooks outwards. In fact, her nose is almost exactly the same shape as mine. Whereas this girl, this girl has quite a flat brow ridge. She doesn't have a well-defined nose. She has a well-defined bottom of the nose, but not a well-defined top. So that could be very clever contouring. I would say she probably doesn't have a very high nose ridge here because her eyes are so big. I mean, she's got Disney princess eyes, hasn't she? And we all know Disney princesses don't have noses. So I would say she probably has quite a flat nose, and that's very clever contouring. Whereas this girl, her nose actually looks wrong to me. If you look at her face, that part of her face looks wrong. It would not surprise me if she's had some sort of constructive surgery on her nose. That's not to say that she has necessarily. She could just be a mix of races. But she was classed as Indian. The high cheekbones and the big eyes definitely would indicate that she's of Indian origin. But she's also got this huge brow ridge, which is very unusual in an Indian woman. Like I say, usually they have this flat bit and then a hooked nose. Another thing to watch out for is the width of the nose. We tend to talk about cute noses as being button noses, like very rounded and cute. Unless it's a much older person, because, you know, obviously as you age, your nose keeps growing. So this lady now has a much bigger nose than she did when she was younger. But this lady, I mean, she has a cute little button nose. Usually when you think of African-American women, you would automatically think, oh yeah, they have bigger noses. We're kind of conditioned to think that somehow. They don't really have bigger noses. They have different shaped noses. But what it mostly is that the width of their nose is different. So on a white person's face, again, we're talking generically, on a white person's face, the width of the face, the nose would be the width of the difference between the eyes. Now, how am I going to explain this? If you take this width and divide it in 4, okay? But obviously you have a little bit of a gap here and a little bit of a gap here. If you divide this in half and this bit in half, that's the outer edge of the eyes. And then you put that over here, that is the inner edge of the eyes and the width of the nose. So you end up with a face. Don't worry, I've got an explanatory video that goes through this in much better detail. Oh, hey, Liz. I've got an explanatory video that explains this in much better detail. This is not the core of the class. That is then the width of the nose. And if they're looking straight forward, the inner portion of the iris will be the width of the mouth. Okay, now on black people, that's not the same. On black girls, what you'll find is that the eyes, you can place them in a very similar area. So you can do it's basically dividing it in 4. So you've got a quarter, and a half, which is 1. And then you've got a half and a half, which is 2, which is what gives you the 3 eyes. You know, they always say you've got 1 eye in between your 2 to give you the spacing. And then you've got a quarter and a quarter on either side for the width of the face. Now, if you draw the eyes like that for a black person, what you'll find is actually the nose comes out to where the lips do here. So the iris will actually be where the width of the nose is, and you'll find that their nose tends to be here rather than here. So you're looking at a much lower bridge and a much wider bottom piece of the nose. Okay. Because of that, you then get the lips underneath, and the lips will automatically look bigger. Now, they do have fuller lips anyway, but the size of the mouth will automatically look bigger because it's being compared to a smaller nose. So if you look at this lady's face, her mouth looks much bigger, even though it's really not that much bigger than, say, this girl's or this girl's. It's just that her lips are fuller. But because she's got such a tiny nose, it's very small. It's pushed in towards her face. You can see it very well on this girl. hardly any nose ridge there at all. She would struggle to wear glasses because there's hardly anything to put the glasses on. But then down at the bottom, quite rounded and very wide around this way. A white person's nose might be more kind of there and then upwards. That brow ridge would be more up here if she was white. So the fact that their noses look daintier because they are further back in their face makes their eyes and their lips look much bigger. But you also do have, obviously, the difference in the lips. I couldn't find anything obvious in the lips, except that people of Black origin tended to have thicker lips, and people of Asian origin tended to have thinner lips but wider mouths. That seemed to be quite across the board. It's very difficult. I mean, you can't just generalize about everybody. I'm just trying to give you pointers for what to look for that would say, hang on, this is not just a generic white girl. What is it about her that makes her different? Yeah, this is not just a white woman who dyes her hair black. I mean, you know, if you didn't know she was Korean and somebody says, oh, you know, she's just a classy French lady or a classy Italian lady, you could be fooled into thinking that if you didn't know what you were looking for. Partly because she's got the brow ridge, which is unusual. I would say this lady is probably mixed race, although it did say she was Korean. But if you look at this Vietnamese girl and the other Korean girl, this girl has no brow ridge whatsoever. None at all. She's got the little cute button nose. Same with this girl, little cute button nose, no brow ridge at all. Whereas this lady has a very defined structure there, that T structure. Now, interestingly enough, when you're trying to get a likeness of a person, what is the key area of getting a likeness? Do you know? There's a key area on the face that if you get that part of the face right, you can pretty much do anything else you like and it'll still be recognizable as that person. No? It is this triangle. That's not quite a triangle, but you know what I mean. From the outer, you can feel it there, the outer thing of your skull on your eyebrow, where your brow ridge ends, a straight line across there, and a straight line down to the corner of your nose, which anybody who plucks their eyebrows properly will know that that goes to the corner of your eye and then to the bottom of your nose. If you get that triangle right, doesn't matter who you're drawing, it'll look like them. You can do anything else you like to the entire face. That's how caricature works. As long as you get that bit right, and it doesn't even have to be exactly right, it can be proportionally right. So someone like, I'm trying to think of somebody that's obvious. Sylvester Stallone. Huge nose, little beady eyes. As a caricature, as long as you get that triangle proportionally correct or recognizably correct, you will always be able to recognize it as Sylvester Stallone. Now, he's got very beady eyes and a very large nose. So if you make his nose a little bit larger and his eyes a little bit smaller, as long as they are proportionally correct in this triangle, it's still going to look like Sylvester Stallone. By the same token, there are some people who that triangle is just not particularly identifiable. Julia Roberts, for instance. Julia Roberts, if you just do that bit of her, or Charlize Theron, or anybody like that, they're all so generically mirrored. Because you know the whole theory about if the two halves of the face are more alike, the mirroring of the face is closer to each other, then it's seen as more attractive. we're just drawn to people who have perfectly symmetrical faces. If you just take that bit, they don't look like anybody in particular. It would be very difficult to tell who's who. The minute you slap a mouth on Julia Roberts, I mean, who could miss those teeth? As soon as you've got a mouth there, even if she's just smiling, she's got a mouth that is way wider than normal. Or that's just the way her mouth is, but that's her defining feature because it's out of the norm. So when you're talking about caricature, which is kind of what we're doing here, you're looking for the things that make the person unique. Not different, not weird, just unique. Somebody might have a really big nose, but that might not be what makes them unique. Lots of people have big noses. What might be is that they have a particularly hooked nose. You know, they might have the Robert De Niro hook. That's a very distinctive hook. They might have the rosacea look, where the bottom of the nose becomes very bulbous, like Woody Allen. Woody Allen's got a very distinctive nose. It's not a very big nose, but it's bulbous. So you can take those defining traits and create a caricature that becomes then a generic kind of, oh, that's so-and-so. You know, you can identify people by those particular traits that you subconsciously, in your head, you look at them and you go, oh, I recognize that as Cody and not Liz because, you know, there's actually, when you look at Liz and, in fact, actually, Liz and Cody isn't a very good example. Liz and Risha is a good example. If you just look at their faces, if you didn't know them, it would be quite difficult to tell them apart. Just on first glance, first viewing, you wouldn't necessarily go, oh, it's two completely different people if you saw two quick snapshots. But once you know them, you know that their faces are different. Even though facial structure, they look very similar. Even their glasses are very similar. The way they wear them is very similar. Their laughs are very similar, you see? Their teeth are very similar, but they don't look like each other once you know them. So what is it that gives us those cues that says, hang on a minute, no, that's Liz, that's Risha? And interestingly, this ties in with my Asperger's because recognizing people, facial recognition is one of the things I struggle with. I tend to remember people because they have something obvious about them that I can say, oh, yes, I know that, that's such and such. If Cody ever cuts her hair off, I'll never recognize her again because I recognize her by her long hair. I mean, I don't now, I recognize her as Cody. Once you know somebody personally, it's different. But when you're just looking at a face and going, oh yeah, that's so-and-so. I have a terrible trouble recognizing actors when they're in different things, especially if they're character actors. Johnny Depp is not so bad because it's his voice that gives him away. But character actors, there are some character actors like, oh, what's his name? That strange, creepy guy, Crispin Glover. Does anybody actually know what Crispin Glover looks like? Because he looks different in every single film I've ever seen him in. He always looks vaguely familiar. And I go, that guy kind of looks vaguely familiar, but I don't know who he is. And then I find out that in a previous film that I watched a couple of days ago, he was in that as well. And it's his mannerisms and his body and his way of speaking that I'm picking up on. And yet he looked completely different in the film. So there's lots of different things that you need to look for. Pretty good at recognizing faces, but terrible putting a name to the face. Oh, don't even get me started. Bad with faces, worse with names. Everybody was at the sketches thing at the weekend. Everybody was coming up and telling me their name, and I'm just like, that's nice. The next time I see you, you'll be, oh, hi. And they're like, why? Aren't you good with names? I'm not good with names. I'm not good with faces. You haven't got a dog with you, so. Oh, anyway, something I thought I might try and do, because obviously I haven't got enough on at the moment. You're terrible with face recognition. That could be, is that linked to your ADHD? because you have a very short attention span and you don't really focus on any one thing at a time? Is it better if you get to like spend time with a face? Like if you just meet somebody for a coffee and you don't really know them, it's much more difficult to recognize them than if there's somebody you see a lot or more often. No. No, I was just curious if it was something to do with that.
No,
I don't tend to be, because I associate things with people to know who that person is. Somebody I see at the dog park with their Labrador, and I know them to say hello to them in the park, even if they haven't got their dog with them. Outside of the park, I have no idea who they are. Or if they're not in a shop with their uniform on and they say hello to me, I'm like, that's nice, but I don't know who you are. No, you just have trouble with facial recognition. Okay, so I'm going to do this in my air section for fairies. I was thinking I might try and do, because I need some downtime. I'm peopled out and I want to just spend some time drawing. So I thought a good way of doing that might be a drawing challenge. And there's one that's 100 faces. Technically, you're supposed to draw 100 faces in 10 days, but we all know that's not going to happen. But I thought, what about trying to sketch different types of faces? Because I don't know if this is just me. It might well be. But when I think of fairies, I think of them in two different ways. I think of the fae, which is the Celtic version. So I always think of them as white and freckles with long red hair. That's just Celtic to me. That says Celtic to me. Whereas when I think of fairies in general, I tend to think of them as being non-white. I don't know why, but if I had to pick a face for a fairy, it'd probably be this one with her mischievous little grin. She looks very fairy to me. So I thought it would be fun to do fairies with non-white faces. Because why not? Anybody can draw a white person fairy. I had a weird experience once at college where there was part of a twin in my class and the other twin was studying something else, and I recognised them after seeing them 2 times, but switched the twins and talked to the one who wasn't in my class. Ah, so you recognised that they were 2 different people, and you recognised one of the twins, but you got the wrong identity. Yeah, that would be me. I would know exactly who they were, and exactly which I would get the right twin and everything, but I'd get the names wrong. Twins you can pick out. That's interesting. Not many people can spot the difference between twins, but I find it easy to pick twins out as well. Okay. Shall we start with some basic facial structure first, or do you just want to jump in and start sketching? Do you think it would help to have basic, bearing in mind that basic facial structure tends to be generic white girl, which is not going to really help us here. But I can show you how I build a face, and that might help you. I have an interesting ability to be able to take a face like this and turn it into a face like that, or a face like that and turn it into a pose like that. And the way I do that is by using squares and placement. So no, let's just jump in. Let's just jump in and do it, because really it's the facial features that are different for everybody. So you'll learn the structure as we go along. Let's start with this girl. She's the closest we've got to someone who looks like they could be white. So what I normally do with this is I start with 2 squares. I know that sounds weird, but bear with me. So I draw 2 squares, one on top of the other. They don't have to be exact, because I'm not trying to draw this girl. I'm using this girl's face as a reference, which is a different thing. I'm not trying to draw her. Now 2 squares, one on top of the other. What we're going to do is divide this square in half and this square in half. Again, roughly, it doesn't have to be exact. And then we're going to divide this full rectangle in half. So you end up with 8 squares, like a grid. Now, my way of doing it is slightly different because mine includes hair. Most head structures do not include hair. So you'll need to be careful with that if you're copying other people's way of doing things. So basically, the head that I use fits here like this. That's your basic head shape. So I take roughly a third and I do a dome. I curve it down to this corner. I do a little out and back in for the cheek. And then I generally just do a curve and join those 2 lines up. And that gives me my oval for the face. Now, faces are not flat, they're rounded. So what I'm going to do here is make a small curve on either side of that line there. And immediately you can see that's where the eyes are going to go. I have this in a smaller video, much slower, and with diagrams. So don't worry if you're not keeping up, it's fine. So we're going to do that half and half. So remember, we're going to divide this into 4, but unequally. So we want the 3 halves in the middle and then a quarter on either edge. So half and half, that gives you your quarter. So there is the quarter line for the outside edge of the eye. And then what's left, you're going to divide in 3. So a quarter in from that side. And then this is where your eyes are going to go. You continue that line down. And that, from that point there between the eyes, downwards, for a white person, is where your nose is going to go. And then halfway across this end, that's the bottom of the lip. And then you just divide in half, and the width of the eye, the iris of the eye is in there where the eyeball is, and it will usually be on that line. So that part there is roughly where the mouth is going to be. Your eyes here. Again, everybody's eyes are different. Very few people have eyes that match on both times. Your mum calling you again. Does she have access to the calendar or something? Is she checking up? People who have symmetrical faces stand out as being incredibly good looking, and incredibly good looking throughout their whole lives, because your faces don't suddenly stop being symmetrical. Classic example of a generically beautiful face that most people, I mean, he may not be your type, but most people admit that he is very attractive, Johnny Depp. If you take half of Johnny Depp's face and you flip it to the other side, you get Johnny Depp. Usually, especially with me, and because my face, I mean, if you look at my face is completely different on both sides. Even the shape of my face is different. So if you took this half of my face and flipped it across that side, you'd get one version of me. And if you took that half of my face and flipped it across there, you'd get a completely different person. This is why most people don't like photos of themselves. Because what you're seeing is not what you're used to seeing. The version of you is the reversed version you see in the mirror. So suddenly being confronted with something that is completely alien to you, you go, oh no, I don't like that picture. Well, of course you don't, because it's not what you're used to seeing. That's why a lot of people like taking selfies on an iPhone, because when you take a selfie on an iPhone, you open the camera and you see the mirror version of the picture. Remember on a Mac or an iPhone or anything, everything's backwards. Everybody does the whole, oh, which side of the screen am I going? Because they can't remember. It's not going the way they expect it to go. That's because it's reversed. The writing looks reversed because you're looking at it as if it's in a mirror. But when you take the photo, it takes the photo of what it's actually seeing. So you get the photo when you take the selfie, you are positioning your face in the way that you like it, that you are used to doing it. So when you see the reversed image, it looks more pleasing to you because you connect to it, because it's how you wanted it to look. Do you see? It's very tricksy psychology, tricksy psychology. But yeah, people who are conventionally beautiful, that almost everybody agrees it just is attractive. I mean, I don't think many people would look at this girl and say, oh, she's not very attractive, is she? Are you kidding me? Her face is so symmetrical, it's frightening. Yeah, her eyebrow is up on one side, but her mouth is pulled up further on one side. She's got kind of a half-face smile. She's not just at the camera. She's pulling an expression. So yeah, her face looks slightly different. This lady, look at her. She's beautiful. Look at how symmetrical her face is. Her face is almost identical on both sides. Very slight variation in the eyes. But honestly, I'm not convinced that that isn't an optical illusion because of the white highlighter on her eyes. It might be that that highlight is making it look like this eye is slightly more rounded. Perfectly symmetrical face. So if you want your fairies, regardless of how you draw them, to look really pretty, the key is symmetry, not how you draw them. You could draw, this is how you end up with cute faces, okay? Because you can take this generic thing and let's change it to, instead of squares, let's use flat rectangles. Now we're going to get a short, fat, wide face, right? But as long as we've got the placement the same, it should still work. So half and half along here, get the quarter line, mark out where the quarter line on the eye is going to be. That's going to be there. The quarter in the middle, the quarter of the inside of the eye. That gives you the length of the nose. The mouth is going to be the size of the iris, so just very slightly inside that line there. So now, if you just draw a generic shapes, again, we'll go for the basic white person nose for now. Oh, I should have said, you put an extra line in here, that's your eyebrow arch. So an extra line in here, that's the eyebrow arch. That's where the top of the eyebrow sits. Doesn't matter what shape your eyebrow is, the top of the arch will hit that line there. Do a generic, halfway, generic mouth. Now, because the chin is very flat, we're going to end up with a very, very rounded face. Bring the cheeks out. But what you end up with is a very childish looking face because it's rounded. It's still recognizable as a face. It's just a very childish looking face. Now, this top of the head here that I draw in is actually the top of the hair. So don't go adding on hair like this. You'll start getting some very weird faces. The hair actually is on that line. So I would literally just maybe add a little bit for a bit of a wave or a parting, and then bring the hair down from that line for the brow down across here. Okay. By the time you put the eyes in, and, you know, noses are a bit tricky, but a basic nose like that will do fine. Nice little Cupid's bow for the mouth. And you've got a basically pretty face. She's cute. She's not a very good drawing. Like this screen is just weird. She's not pretty, but she's cute. She's, well, rather, she's not well drawn, but she's cute. And that's what we're aiming for. Cute and pretty by making them symmetrical. Even this one, believe it or not, we can turn this into something pretty. So just going to round off her eyebrows on this one. We'll give her a nose like that. We'll give her a very basic kind of rounded nose. Don't need anything fancy for a nose. We'll make her eyes just come down a little bit and upwards, and then down a little bit and upwards. So she's got kind of a cat eye look to her. So she's possibly not human. Again, a nice little Cupid's bow type upper lip. I don't generally draw the bottom lip. I just draw the upper lip, and then I put the shadow in for the bottom of the lip, and it's enough. Let's perhaps give her a Angelica Houston style fringe. Maybe straight hair. Let's sort this chin out so that she looks a little bit less wonky. She's not terrible. I mean, she's not going to win any beauty pageants, but she's not terrible. So you can adjust this basic sketch to fit any face. The trick is to look at the face and go, okay, what's the square going to look like? So on this lady here, if we take a line across her eyes, and I usually do it from outer corner to outer corner, because the inner corner is the one that tends to shift. We've got the center line down the middle of the face. Oh, look, her face is off to one side. Actually, her chin is not centered. How interesting. Well, we can do something about that. There's her chin. The top of her head would be about here. So her square is going to start off about that big. Let's start off with it about that big. Oh, look, it's almost identical to the previous one I drew. Isn't that strange? Because it's all about placement of the features and shape of the features. It's not about the structure underneath. All skulls basically look the same. That's what you have to remember. This is your skeleton for your drawing. Most skulls, to the untrained eye, look exactly the same. You might say, oh, this one's got a big jaw, this one's got a big brow ridge, but in general, all skulls look the same to the layman. And that's what you've got to think about when you're doing your squares, is that you know, they're basically going to look the same. All I'm changing is maybe the width of her face or the roundness of her chin or the shape of her eyes. So I'm going to do my basic mark-offs again, quarter, quarter. That gives me my nose. My mouth will be slightly wider. Mouth line for the bottom of the mouth will be there. The eyebrows will be about there. So what have we got? Well, she's got a very wide nose. Look at how wide her nose is compared to what we've been saying about noses. Look, if I draw the line down there, her entire nose flap is outside the width because she's older. What happens with older noses? Noses and ears, they both do the same thing. They keep growing. So an older person, straight away, you're going to say, okay, so I'm going to make the nose bigger and I'm going to make the ears a little bit more prominent because they keep growing throughout your life. So let's adjust this and say, okay, maybe her nose will be that wide. And look, her nose, the width of her nose is almost identical to the width of her mouth. So sometime between adolescence, when we get our adult features, and old age, our nose goes from being the width of the shape between our eyes to the width of our mouth. That's how far it grows. Her eyes are very slanted down. Her eyes actually start much lower than anybody else's eyes I've seen. They actually slant way down. I don't know if that's an old person thing or a Mexican person thing. I have no idea, but her eyes are very slanted down. So I can use that straight line as a guide to say, okay, I'm going to draw her eyes much more like that. And they're very slit so that you haven't got much of an eye to be able to see. Her nose is a very distinct shape. This bulb is almost the entire width you would expect her nose to be. And then it kind of goes flat and up and flat and up. And it even goes a little bit less curved than that. Her brow ridge is very well defined, so I'm going to mark it on both sides. And then her eyebrows, she's got a very distinct look. Her eyebrows don't go like that. They kind of go like that. She almost looks worried. But at the same time, you can tell that's her natural expression. So she's just got a very well-defined ridge there. Her hair is interesting. I like her hair. Let's take her hair from that midpoint. It's just a little bit further up. Again, she's older. Her hairline will have receded. So let's take it just a little bit further up than we'd expect it to be. And then this bit, we'll bring it down to where it would normally be. And give it a little bit of a wave to it because she's obviously got curly hair. Now, because she's got curls, her hair will be a bit thicker. So instead of just doing a straight round top, we'll do that defined poofiness. So that's where her skull is, and her hair will come out around it because it'll be thick. Her mouth is almost entirely a straight line, which is interesting. This part here is actually the bottom of the lip, but her lips have thinned out so much you can't really see it. So I'm going to do just a very across the middle kind of mouth, and then do the dimple in the chin there. I've made her mouth just a little bit too wide because her mouth, I'm used to drawing the mouth a little bit wider than the nose, and I forgot that I've drawn the nose wider. This is the kind of thing you need to watch out for. You've already drawn the nose wider. You don't want to draw the mouth wider again. Normally you would. The easiest way to mark the corner of a mouth is to do, I do a little scribble and a flick, and a scribble and a flick. And then I change the shape of the mouth accordingly. She's got very thin lips, so we don't need to do very much. I think her eyes could stand to be just a little bit smaller. Certainly this one does. No, this pencil doesn't erase very well. There we go. Now her chin is quite rounded. It's not pointy like this. It's more kind of that shape. So let's put a nice rounded chin in there. And then the shape of her cheeks outwards kind of comes out and then down. Like that. Notice her ears stick out quite a wide way. Her ears, the different distance of her ears is actually almost another quarter on top of that. When I say a quarter, I mean a quarter of the square. So her ears are very wide compared to what they would normally be. See how she's starting to get that older look to her? We haven't even put any wrinkles in yet, but she automatically is starting to look like an older person. Simply because we've made the nose and ears bigger. Handy if you want to draw crone fairies. So, or crones, or older goddesses. Her hair, again, it's very thick and very wavy, so I'm going to put lots of thick curls around this area. That's something else I noticed about dark-skinned women in general. Their hair doesn't go thin. Like with white women, you get to a certain age, your hair starts going very, very thin. It's almost like once it goes white, you don't have any hair. Most women with very thick curls to begin with, I notice their hair tends to stay very thick. Like this Indian lady has very, very thick, luscious hair for someone her age. I don't remember seeing a black woman with very thinned hair either, not unless she's had very harsh treatments done to her hair. This lady's hair is very thick. Again, is that because they're leaving it to grow naturally rather than having a twin set and perm every 2 weeks? Who knows? Something else you'll notice is that the neck gets wider. And because the neck gets wider, it looks like the neck gets shorter. It's not really the neck getting shorter, it's more of a waddle. Yes, Liz, you're getting the thickness under the neck. It's a sad fact of life that by the time you get to a certain age, you no longer have 2 chins, you have 4 or 5 of them. Look. I've always had a big chin. Even when I was skinny, I had a double chin. It was the bane of my life, and now I've got a bullfrog chin. It's only getting worse as I get older. So you may be wondering what we're going to do with the bottom bit of this. 2 things. For a child, you can do straight down, no neck, because children don't really have necks. They haven't grown that bit of the vertebrae yet, so they don't have necks. Don't bother with necks on children. Indicate necks by giving them a t-shirt kind of effect, and that indicates they've got a neck. With a normal with a white person, what I tend to do is use the corners of this to come up to the middle here. And that gives you the curve of the shoulders. Now, we're not talking biologically correct shoulders, we're talking pretty girl shoulders, okay? And then from halfway across here, you're simply joining the two together. And that gives you that nice slope of the pretty girl shoulder that you then put the hair over and so on. Now, this lady, what tends to happen as you get older, your neck becomes fuller, so it doesn't look as long. It's an optical illusion, but it doesn't look as long. But also, instead of standing upright like this, you tend to hunch. And if you look what happens when I go from sitting upright with my shoulders back to hunched. What happened to my neck? Disappeared. So it's not necessarily that her neck got shorter, her head is further forward, therefore it looks like she's got a shorter neck. And that's very common in older people because as you get older, you hunch. So we have to both give her a neck and not give her a neck at the same time. Hey, Jane. You're at work. That's okay. You can listen to us waffle. Now, this is where you have to ignore what the generic says again. And instead of just like, I'll draw it in blue, what I would normally do, I would normally draw an oval kind of shape that would give me the shoulders. And then from halfway, I'd go down to the corner and halfway down to the corner. And that would give me that kind of young, pretty girl shape. And look, she automatically lost 10 years because I gave her a neck. Now in the red, I'm going to do what she's actually got. And you do that by looking at your reference photo. So her neck actually comes down almost the width of her face to about that line. And then her shoulders, because she's hunched, her shoulder line is actually back here. So I would draw the shoulder line there on this lady. Her shoulders are still going to be around here somewhere. Okay, just the same as if she was younger, you know, her shoulders are going to be around here. They're not going to be that different. But look at the difference in the neck. Instead of having a neck that comes down and out, she's got a neck that goes up and around. And then this bit comes down. And 9 times out of 10, there will be some sort of a waddle here as well. So you might want to put that in. It's almost like adding an Adam's apple. And the minute you do that, you see how much older she got simply by adding those lines a little bit further up and then giving her a bit of a waddle. Cody, excellent. Just by, let me put you on screen. Hang on. She's done exactly what she was. Oh, no, I don't want to pin you. Hang on. Whoa. Unpin. I'm pinned. I want to spotlight you. There we go. There you go. See? Now she's started putting in wrinkles and stuff. We haven't quite got that far yet. But just by making the mouth and the nose much wider and the ears bigger and no neck, she's got an old lady. And not only that, but she doesn't look like a regular white old lady either, does she? And that's what we're aiming for. We're not necessarily aiming to draw this Mexican woman or to have somebody, you know, that we can see is Mexican. We're just trying to get a shape that's not a generic pretty white girl by using a different reference photo. So I've got a couple of things here that I want to change. That line there is not what I want. I didn't realise this pencil was not going to erase properly, which is annoying. I think what I'll do is go over her in regular pencil so I can get the actual shape that I'm going for. So I'm just going to sketch in quickly, just so that you can see a bit better the shape that I'm looking or I'm aiming for. I'm not going to do her eyes just yet. I want to do her eyes in a second. Her mouth has got that kind of bowed upwards look, and the easiest way to do that is to draw the top lip and not the bottom lip. And then she's got that crag at the bottom there. Her hair is fine. You can see her hair is fine. And then her neck. It's incredible how much just changing the length of the neck ages a portrait. It's fascinating to me how this works. So I'm going to go in and draw her eyes again now. So I've got the very basic shape. And what you'll find is the actual eye shape itself is not wrinkled. It's the skin around the eye shape that's wrinkled. So you can draw the white of the eyeball shape. And then if they have skin overhanging, because again, eyelids tend to droop, don't they? Sometimes you'll have eyelids that come way down over the eyes. Just draw the eyeball that you know, the opening to the eye that you know is there, and then draw the eye skin hanging over the eye, because that's what happens. You get it in front. It's like leaves hanging over a tree, you know? So her eyes are very, very dark. And she's actually got very blue eyes. That's strange. I wouldn't have thought a Mexican woman would have blue eyes, but she does have very blue eyes. How interesting. The main piece of skin that ages people is this bit on the corner here. We all know it. We all look in the mirror and go, oh my goodness me. I'm 20, I'm 40. I'm 20, I'm 40. So instead of having a corner eye like that, you draw the corner eye in, and then you automatically draw in that little saggy bit of skin, and it will age the eye automatically. You also have the traditional crow's feet here and here, here, and then the line around the outside of the nose, which will be individual. Actually, it's not always obvious. And then wrinkles on the brow. This lady's got wrinkles around her cheeks as well, where she's smiling, although you'd never know she was smiling. She's also got defined lines around her mouth. And she's got some wrinkling around her chin here, which I'm just going to put in as shading because I don't want to give her too many lines. Now, the problem you get is that if you give too many lines, you end up with a caricature. You don't want necessarily a caricature. You just want to make her look old. So what I always do is I put the lines in equally, and then I go back in and I erase some of them. And you end up with this kind of half and half look. She still looks old, but all of her wrinkles aren't completely symmetrical. So if I've got 2 on one side, I might do 3 on the other. If I've got 2 on one side, I might do 1 on the other. I might make one of these lines very defined and the other one barely there. What you'll also find is that when you make women look older, they look more like men, because your facial features get squarer as you get older, because your nose keeps growing, your ears keep growing, your chin fills out, your neck widens. That's all the things you do to make a man's face. So if your little old lady ends up looking like quite a nice looking young bloke, you've done a good job. Because it's the clothes they wear that's going to make the difference. Now, when it comes to drawing pupils, pupils are an interesting thing. Find a way of drawing pupils that's always going to look the same. Men lose estrogen, women lose estrogen as well. Oh, of course they do, yeah. We lose estrogen, which, does it get replaced with testosterone, or would it just be just the level of percentage of estrogen to testosterone drops? Does the testosterone goes up as the estrogen drops, or does it stay the same? I don't know, actually. I know the pill is to do with estrogen and testosterone levels and things. I don't really know how it works. It's interesting though yeah, women become less feminine looking as they get older, which is weird, but it's a weird way of saying it, but we know what we mean. So as far as eyes go, find a way of doing eyes. I mean, you can use any generic almond shape for eyes. And of course, then you've got your iris. Don't draw your iris in the middle of your eyeball. Your eyeball is there. Your iris is there. Your pupil is there. And this bit of your eye comes somewhere around here or here, depending on how big your eye is, depending on the shape of your eye. It might go up like that and then come down. You can play with it. But that is basically what happens. You need to have the top of your eye, at the very least, coming within this section here. That top of the eyelid needs to come somewhere in there. It needs to cover the iris somewhere. It can come down as far as the pupil. It can even cover the pupil if you want to, partially. That's fine. Especially with an older eye, you'll get that. But don't have it so that it goes around like that, because the minute you do that, unless you're actually going for that, it's going to look wrong. Okay, so always remember that the eyeball goes up above the eyelid. So you have the shape of the eye socket, the shape of the eyelid, and then the shape of the eye, and that eyeball is in there. So you're going to have at least a bit here. Anybody watch Dr. Pimple Popper? Think of cutting open cysts, where she cuts a slit in a cyst and you can see the cyst underneath. Yeah, I'm a pimple popper. I'm sorry. I like it. It's interesting. Testosterone in women declines by 1%, but slowly goes down in menopause. Oh, right. Okay. So estrogen just drops much faster than testosterone then. Because men's testosterone drops as well, doesn't it? So testosterone just drops at X rate and estrogen drops 3 or 4 times X rate. Okay, cool. Thank you. It's handy having nurses and stuff in the group, isn't it? You learn all sorts of things. So the way I do my pupils, and if you don't know of any other way of doing it yet, do this. It's fine. When I do my pupils, I always do them the same way. I do that bit of the circle, and then I just color it over like that. Let me bring it a bit closer so you can see a bit better. So I draw that bit of the circle, and then I just color it in. So there's kind of a circle bit there. I mean, you could put a circle there if you wanted to. There's nothing wrong with using that as an eye. In fact, do that. I would say do that until you're happy with coming up with your own eyes. Generic pupils. You can make any generic eye look pretty okay simply by drawing that circle and then drawing a circle in there and filling that bit in. Looks perfectly fine. If you want to, you could erase that outer white light, or you could make instead of making it a circle, make it a rectangle of light or a triangle of light. Doesn't really matter. As long as you've got that light catching on the eye, that's all that matters. But when I do arties, that's literally all I do for my pupils. Unless I can see what the pupils are actually doing, that's what I do. And it always seems to work. So now I've got an old lady. See, you all looked at this and went, that's never going to work. Look at it, it's ugly. It looks like Marilyn Manson. It's never going to work. But look, it does work. Who should we do? Let's do this lovely girl here with her big lips and her lovely cute button nose. She's gorgeous. This girl here. It says Hawaiian. I'm not sold, but we'll assume it's right. We'll assume the photographer knew what they were talking about. I'm actually going to do it the other way around with this. I'm going to use the red for the squares because the blue is easier to hide. So I'm going to start with the exact same squares I just used for my old lady. Well, maybe not the exact same squares, but, you know, this is the squares that I draw. Get used to drawing squares and setting it up like this. Let me just tweak that. Tweak the... Oh, is it on the wrong camera again already? Why? Okay. I don't know why it's focusing the wrong camera again. I can't be messing with it right now. Is it clear enough? Can you see it? Or do you want me to mess with the camera? Just clear enough. Okay. Now, this girl has a completely different shaped nose. So when we draw her generic features in, we're going to do it slightly different. So I'm going to do the same. Her nose line's going to be there, her chin, her eyes, her eyebrow stroke hairline, her mouth. I'm going to start with her eyes. So eye line, in a quarter, in a quarter, in a quarter, in a quarter. Remember, it's not the size of her eyes that makes her eyes look big. It's the size of her nose that makes her eyes look big. So we're going to draw her eyes. Her eyes are very, again, they come down at the center. So I'm going to draw them from slightly below the line to up onto the line. She's got a very defined tear duct, so I'm going to put that in. And she's got a very defined corner of her eye. She's got Tweety bird eyes. Look, they look like little Tweety birds, look. Tell me you can see the Tweety birds. You can see the Tweety birds, right? Come on, look. You can see the Tweety birds, right? Now her nose, normally we would draw the nose that wide. And we would draw it from up here. So we'd have a brow ridge here and so on. But that's not what her nose looks like. Her nose is, I would estimate, goes up to about there. I would say her nose comes out approximately there. So very similar to the Mexican lady. I'm not drawing her off to one side. That's a whole other kettle of fish that we're not ready for yet. And her nose is a very defined shape. She's got a very M-shaped nose, and her nostrils come around and curl under. But then they go flat at the top. So unlike this lady, you can't see her nostrils at all. This girl, you can see her nostrils quite well, because that part of her nose comes up and round like an M. She's got a very, look at this very strong shape, up and down and up and down. Now, here's an interesting thing. When you draw generic white people, the chin, there's the nose, there's the chin, the mouth, the bottom of the mouth will be there. So you then do half and half, and then this is your top lip, and this is the shadow of your bottom lip. Now, if you do look at this girl, her lips are so thick that actually the bottom of her nose to her chin, because she's also got a very rounded chin, she hasn't got a strong pointy chin, she's got a very rounded chin. Her mouth, actually, if you go halfway, is actually somewhere in that bottom lip. So let's exaggerate that. So that halfway point, instead of making that the bottom of her lip, let's make that the middle of her lip. It's not quite, it should be a little bit further up, but let's exaggerate it. So the width of her lips is actually very similar to her iris. So let's put her iris in. I've made her eyes a little bit too arched, so I'm going to put her eyelids in there. Let's have her looking off to one side. So her mouth is going to be about here. It's a little bit wider than her nose, but not by much. And then her lip, rather than just being a Cupid's bow, it's a big rounded bow. Now you have to be careful. You don't want it to end up looking like a clown. So when you do a big upper lip, what I always do is bring the lower lip in a bit. So her lower lip, I would bring it in just slightly on either side. Otherwise, you tend to get a clown-like appearance. And then we can make that. You don't have to put this bit in. Sometimes it's better to just put the upper lip in and then just shade in a little bit of the lower lip so that you can see where it would be. Because her lip is so much bigger, you actually would get a shine line. And you see how immediately, as soon as you make all we've done is eyes, nose and mouth, but the bigger nose, the wider nose and the bigger lips, automatically our minds are registering this as, oh, this is not just a white girl. This is some kind of ethnic looking, hang on a minute, she might even have dark skin. Your brain automatically does it because it knows that we're not just looking at generic features. There's something different about these features. Now, as far as I could tell, most Black women have this very inset eye and very defined. So whereas with a white eye, you know, you might just about do something like that. These girls really have a defined inset around their eyes. So I'm going to mark that in where I think it would be. And although they do have pupils, I'm actually just going to colour her eyes dark. And then just put a little bit of dark shading on one side. We're definitely looking at a dark-skinned woman, you can tell. We've got a much rounder brow arch here. This is almost circular if you look at this. See? So I'm going to take that circle up there. That's where her brow is. And then she's got just regular kind of shapes up here. And her eyes are a bit close together. I've drawn her eyes too wide and too close together. So I'll fix that in a minute. And she has a very high hairline. Most people's hairlines would be about here. Dark-skinned girls tend to have much further back hairlines. So instead of being along here, where her brows are, her hairline's probably going to be about here. So I'm going to draw that in, kind of like that. And they also have much wider partings. Now, I don't know if that's an optical illusion, just because the hair, obviously you've got the baby hairs around the front of the head. It could be that it's just because the hair is so thick, when you part it, you can see the scalp and it's much more obvious. I don't know. But you tend to have a much bigger gap here for the part than you would if you were drawing a regular pretty girl. I keep saying regular, you know what I mean, a generic white girl is what I mean. I'm loving her lips. I'm not loving her eyes. I think I've done her nose a bit too far down. I think the distance here is far too far. I should have made her eyes. Why are her eyes so far up? Is that not a square? Very strange. Her nose is far too far down. Her nose and her eyes don't match. I'm going to have to fix that. I think I made the bottom half of that square a bit too big. But I don't like her eyes anyway, so we're okay. Let's redraw that bit. Oh, I'm going to use my regular pencil. It's annoying me that I can't erase. So actually, I want her eyes to come down a bit further. That gap there is about the same as that gap there. So that gap there, I think I just should have drawn her eyes further down on this line and smaller. That's better. That's much better. So we'll give her Tweety birds. They look like Tweety birds, okay? They just do. Again, the irises always look very big, but I think that's a optical illusion because the iris and the pupil are almost the same color. So I'm going to do dark eyes, and then I'm going to go and put a darker section in for the pupil. Like that. That's better. I'm much happier with that. So now, instead of having a brow ridge, she's just going to have this kind of rounded section where her eyelids kind of go up and around like that. See here, it's not so much she doesn't have that bit of the nose there that we expect to see. She's got kind of a rounded bit here. So I'm putting that in as a guide for where that eyelid is going to be. Again, we're not trying to draw her, we're using her as a reference. So don't get hung up on, oh, but it doesn't look right, it doesn't look right. Doesn't matter. It does, however, matter that her eyes are too close together. Still, I've done it again. I've drawn her eyes too close together because I keep adding that bit on instead of taking it off. So we take that out. There we go. That's better. Now we're getting somewhere. So this will come down a little bit further. That's more like it. And again, she's got lovely curls. And she's got quite a rounded chin. She's got quite a squarish jaw, actually, and a rounded chin, which is very different to what we normally see. I think I've drawn her mouth a little bit too big, so I'm going to scale that down a little bit. This is what your sketching is for, you see. You practice getting the right proportions. Now her hair, because it's very thick and curly, I'm going to add some to it because that will also help balance out her face because her hair is very wide. But she's got a slim neck because she's a younger girl. And again, it's completely different facial structure. Now, I'm not in any way trying to say, oh, yeah, look at that, I drew a black girl. What I'm saying is I used this girl's reference photo to draw something that's not just a regular pretty white girl. Good, Cody. Excellent. I like it. You've got the width of the eyes, the space between the eyes much better than I did. Mine still isn't wide enough. I think I didn't do her face wide enough. I think I did this bit of her face should have been a bit more this width, and then her eyes would have been out here somewhere. It's good. I think you're actually better at doing character sketches than you are at doing generic pretty white girl sketches, because when you try to do generic pretty white girls, you tend to get too fussy over them, whereas the character drawings you're actually sketching. You should do some more character drawings, I think. Very good. Okay, we got time to do one more. Let's do one more, but let's do it. Let's do a side-on face. Let's do this girl. Lady. This lady has the most interesting face. I couldn't stop looking at her. She's fascinating. So if you're going to draw a side-on face, the horizontal lines are basically the same. Okay. So start with 2 squares as normal, but this lady's got a very wide face, but very short and quite angular. So I'm not doing 2 exact squares. I'm doing rectangles, more rectangular. Let's have a go at drawing her sideways. Now her nose, her center line, her nose still lines up with her chin, and the middle of her eyebrows still line up with her chin and everything else. But because it's on a ball, it's actually going to be like that. So you're not drawing a straight line, you're drawing a curve. And it's not in the center, it's off to one side. Okay, so we'll start off with what we had before. That's a bit too low. Let's do that again. And then we're going to move this line across to here. This is our new nose line. But what did we just say? It's not a straight line, it's a curve. So instead of drawing a straight line, we're going to curve it. Only very slightly, don't get over crazy with it. And then this line of the outside of the face is also going to be a curve because she's turned that way. Okay, so we're kind of ending up with a squished square. It kind of bows out on one side. Bear with me, you'll see where we're going in a second. So let's get rid of that straight line. Our center line that we used to have here is now going to be the guide that we use for the eye on the other side. And this back line here that we were using for the side of the face is now going to be the guide for the back of the head. Because when you think about the top part of the head, it's easy to see on mine. If you turn it that way, it's basically a ball that's just turning, and the only defining point of it is the nose and the chin. If you took away the nose and the chin, it's all just basically a ball shape. Okay? So we're turning our square into a ball. Now she does have a very low head here. Her skull is very squashed and very wide. So her cheek is going to be, no, let's start with her nose. Her nose is going to be there. Bottom of her nose is going to be there. She does have a brow ridge, so her nose will be in that area there, which puts her eyes here. So that eye is going to go there, and this eye is going to go here, across this center line. This only works for proper three-quarter faces, but it's a good way of turning a head without having to know a lot of technical information. Again, we're only sketching. We're not trying to make a beautiful photorealistic person. The ball of the nose is actually there. So she will see this bit of the nose here. You can see the plane of the nose there at this angle. And then you see the back of the nose coming down here, and mostly you will see the nostril underneath. Not always, but on this particular one you are seeing the nostril underneath, because a nose doesn't come out flat, it comes out upwards. That's not true. This nose doesn't come out flat, it comes out upwards. She's got kind of a white person's nose in that it goes upwards at the bottom, whereas a black person's nose would go down at the bottom because they have less cartilage. So you're going to see the bottom plane of the nose. Now she has very, very defined shape to her face. So her eyebrow ridge is very rounded and goes up into her head there. Perhaps not quite that rounded. Her cheekbones come way out and then way in. Now, to me, she looks like she's maybe malnourished. That kind of very heavy, kind of gaunt cheeked look. She doesn't just come out a long way and have lovely cheekbones. She goes in a long way as well. So it's almost following the shape of her skull. I don't know if that's something of her people, or if that's just maybe she's not fed very well. Maybe she's older than she looks. You can't tell, honestly. The Laos are Asian, and again, they have no age between 10 and about 200. They just all look the same. From age 10 onwards, they look like adult women, and then suddenly they get old overnight. There's no, like, you can't look at an Asian woman and go, oh, she's about 30. You would have no idea. No idea. Now this lady has a headdress, so that's marginally easier to draw than hair. You just basically just draw it in with straightish lines. Obviously not the rounded bit at the front, but certainly the top bit. And then she has, I think this is hair coming down because she's got a clip in it there. So I would say that's probably about there, and it comes down over her eye there and down to the bottom of her cheek there. Now her chin, remember we did this line here that goes down through her lips to her chin. So that is the middle of her chin. This point here is not the middle of the chin on a 3/4. That point there is the bit that sticks out on a 3/4 view. See? And that's not the middle of the chin. It's the side of the chin. So the middle of the chin will always be part of this bit here. Now, she doesn't have a very well-defined chin either. She has quite a pointy face. So I'm going to put that rounded bit of the chin in there and then just match it up to this bit of the chin here and carry that line up. Kind of comes straight to about here, which makes sense. That would be the other side of her chin. And then it kind of goes up and across. So let's do it like that. And then up and up. This is her jawline. This is this bit here that we're seeing here. And then her chin is actually this bit here. I'm going to make that a little bit more rounded on this side. I think it's... There we go. She does have a very skeletal type face. So I do think maybe she's not... she could be suffering a little bit of malnutrition, which is why her cheeks are so caved in. So the mouth is, again, it follows the line here. So that line there, just inside that line there. On this side, it will come to line up with the outside of the iris because it's turned. Okay, so it would line up with the other side of the eye. So if this is her iris here, the edge of the mouth will line up with that part of the iris, not this part. But on this side, it will still line up with the inside of the iris. So her mouth is going to be in there. She does have slightly fuller lips. Let's see if I do that and that. Yeah, her halfway point is just about where her bottom lip is. So if I do the halfway point, but just very slightly down and count that as the bottom lip, and then it's going to be in this area here. So down to there. Again, she's got that rounded face or rounded lip rather than a Cupid's bow. A fuller bottom lip, but it's not crazy full. It's just fuller. And it's slightly off to one side. And then you can see that bit of her lip here. Now, of course, because you're seeing a 3/4 view, this side of the lip is going to be bigger than this side. So be aware of that. I'm going to give her a little bit of... I did that too far down. I missed the line. I drew the line in and then ignored the line. There we go. That's better. So it's going to be in there. There we go. That's more like it. So bring the line up to meet here, but then this side, it only comes to the edge of the nose before it flips up. She has very inset eyes and not very much wrinkling around the eyes at all, which is what makes me think that she's probably not that old. She's just got very rugged skin, I think. She has a very strong brow ridge. That's where her eyebrows are. And she's got very straight eyebrows as well. Quite a sad face, actually. Now I look at her, she kind of looked a bit stern originally, but now I'm drawing her, she actually kind of just looks a bit sad. Not necessarily sad, just melancholy, I think. I think this nose could be, she's got a little bit more shape to her nose than I've given her, so I'm going to give her a bump in her nose there. And I'm going to make this part of her nose just come out just a tiny bit more. It's a little bit wider than I've actually drawn it, and you can actually see the nose on the other side. Now, if you were placing ears, you would place the ears slightly behind this line. What I normally do is take the jaw up to there and the jaw to there, and then you can see where the ear is going to be. It's going to be in this area here. But obviously you can't see her ear, so we're not drawing her ear. But it helps if you can see where the placement would be. So now she's got this big braid across here. She's got a huge dangly thing here with bells on and coins. Not unlike a gypsy headdress, actually. It's very ornamental. So we can sketch that in. Hi, Boo. Door's open. Go pee. And then her neck is actually, it comes from, you know, when I said the corner of the chin, this corner of the chin is where the bit that sticks out, and then it goes straight up. That's this bit right here. Well, the other side of the chin, this bit here, is usually where the neck will come from. So you can see here, this bit of the chin here, that's the neck. So that neck is going to come down about there. And then she's got some more flaps of material around here. And some more bells and bits. Give her some bells. It's a very fairy type outfit, isn't it? Lots of bells and dangles. There we go. Is she pretty? I think so. I mean, she could be prettier, but your sketch is not meant to be super pretty. Your sketch is for practice. Once you've got everything set where you want it to be, then you go back in. I'm going to change this so that it comes down a little here and joins that. And then this can be hair. I don't think it is. I think it's actually part of her headdress. I don't know, but she's got a clip in it, so maybe it is. What, Scoob? You want to go? The door's not open. Okay, the door's not open. I'm sorry. Hang on a minute. The door's not open. We've got to go pee. Come on then. Come on then. There you go. Door's open. Go on. Pee. Good girl. Go pee. Go on. Out. Go pee. Door's open. Oh, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. Mommy's nearly finished. It's nearly snuggle time. It is. It's nearly snuggle time. Hang on. So, once you've got these crazy faces, what you'll notice... Oh, Cody's showing us hers. Hang on. Let's... Before her arms fall off. Excellent. Well, I think your 3/4 is better than mine, actually. The eyes are not quite right. You've got the eye on one side is deeper on one side than the other. Can you see that looking in the camera? The eye on the cheekbone side is higher than the eye on the other side. So add an eyelid is the answer to that. So on one side, put an eyelid below, and on the other side, put an eyelid above, and then it'll even out. Otherwise, very good. You're getting some very stylized faces in there. Very nice. Okay. Where have I gone? Yeah, that's me. There we go. So what you'll end up with is faces like this that have character. As you practice, you'll be able to work on making them pretty or eccentric or whatever. But what you'll notice is that because of the way I've drawn them, they all have a very distinct style. I don't think anybody would look at any of these faces and not know it as one of my faces. Or nobody in my groups anyway, nobody who's familiar with my art would look at these and go, oh, that's somebody else's work. My faces have a very distinct style, and that's because of this square that I use. So by tweaking that and changing the way you do your eyes, or finding a way of specifically drawing the nose or something like that, pick one thing that you always draw it in a very similar way. So do you always just draw the bottom of the nose, or do you draw the full nose? Do you always draw the full lips, or do you just draw the top lip and a bottom shadow? Do you draw the full eyes, or do you draw the top eye and the iris? Like if you see a girl who's got an eye that basically looks like this, if I see eyes like that on a girl, I know that immediately either that's one of Jane Davenport's girls or it's someone who's done one of her classes, because that's how she draws her eyes. You just develop a style over time. You can't find a style. You just do things in a way that develops a style, if you like. The more you practice doing something, it's like it's hard to think of an example just off the top of my head, but let's say you could do a backflip. Okay, the more you practice doing a backflip, the more your body will be able to do a backflip easily, and it will settle into a way of doing it. Everybody has a particular way they hold a cup. Everybody has a particular way they hold a pencil. And it's not because you've consciously thought, oh yes, I must hold my pencil like this and at this particular size. It's because you do it all the time. It becomes so natural to you that you don't think about it. That's where you want to get with your faces, that it becomes so natural to you to just draw a face and then finalize it afterwards, that you just end up with this. That looks much better, Cody. I can see from here it looks much better. Yeah. I like her. She's good. Very
Something
nice.
I always tend to do with my faces is I draw in the shadow under the lip.
Yes.
And that's just something I've developed over the years. And sometimes depending on the character, since these are all characterized of people, I don't do it. But a lot of my like general girls, I'll draw like a moon shape type up at the brow.
Yes. Anything like that is specific to the way you draw your girls is going to give them a specific look. The fact that I always draw my squares very slightly off gives my girls a very particular look. Even whether they look like Marilyn Manson or the scary child from The Shining or an old lady or whatever, they all have a very specific look about them. The trick is that once you've got to this stage, you recognize that this is a sketch. It's not a finished piece. So you would refine. Of course, this woman is going to look weird. She's got lines all over her face. When you get rid of the lines, you'll start to see the bits of the face that you want to keep and the bits that you don't. So let's get rid of the lines, and suddenly you can see her face a lot better. Oh, okay, yeah, I like the way that is, but I don't like the bottom of her nose, so I need to revisit that. Let's give her a more rounded nose here, and then put the fulcrum, septum, fulcrum. Put the septum in there and give her a stronger nasal hole there. That's better. Now let's get rid of a little bit of this up here. It's too harsh. So let's just give her a bit of a shading around her eye rather than the defined ridge. Much better. She still needs tweaking, but I'm much happier with her now. The other thing is, with this cheek being so defined, it looks weird if you don't define it on this side. So you're going to have to put in at least a bit of shading to indicate that her cheeks are the same on both sides. Otherwise, it's going to look weird. See, now she looks like she's got a face that actually could be a real face. Yes. Cody's already done that. So I will tweak this and play around with it now. Once you've got the basic shape, you can go in and erase bits and change bits. I do think that cheek is a bit, it looks a bit too much, even though that is the shape of her face. I think for the sake of the drawing, it would be better to bring it in just a little bit. I think the drawing would benefit from, that's better. I think that's better. Just shaving off a millimetre off a bit. Even though that is actually the shape of her cheek, I think the drawing looks better if it's not as defined. The other thing you want to do is decide where you want the emphasis to be. So if you want the emphasis to be on the eyes, spend the detail on the eyes. Don't spend a lot of time finicking about with the lips and doing this. The lips, I will probably honestly just shade them up in like that. Shade that bit in there, maybe put a little bit of a shadow in there just to show that that lip is a bit fuller, and that's it. That's all I'll do for her lips. All of the fine detail work that I do will be up here. She'll even have eyelashes by the time I'm done. This bit here is the key piece of the puzzle. This bit here, this T square. That's what you need to be concentrating on. That's where your detail should be. Not necessarily on the nose, but certainly get the nose shape and then the eyes. And you'll even be able to turn Marilyn Manson into something decent. It really does look like Marilyn Manson. I'm going to have to just go with it, I think. Just give him black hair. And if, like me, you manage to use a pencil that doesn't erase, which I find very annoying, just gesso over it if you don't like it. Stick a piece of paper over it. What's that one? Is that the Pilot one? I've got a Pilot Colorino. It's amazing. It's a fantastic pencil. Is that the same as yours?
I'm actually using the friction pens.
Oh, that's a friction pen. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, friction pen. That's a good idea.
That way it's dark enough so you guys can see it. Like, this is a regular pencil.
Well, then you can go over it with regular pen and erase it afterwards as well.
Yeah.
So you can treat it like a pencil. That's a good idea.
But then that way you guys can see it because I use the darker friction pen.
Yeah. Well, I should have thought of that. I should have done that myself. But I like drawing in pencil, so.
Yeah, I like drawing in pencil, but since we're in class and it's easier on the camera, I figure I'd try friction. Plus, it gives me a good chance to try ballpoint pen.
Now, a friction is not a ballpoint pen. A friction is a gel pen. It has a roller ball in the end,
Yeah.
but this is the distinction I was talking about the other day, where a ballpoint pen, the way to tell is that a ballpoint pen, you pretty much have to press on the pen to get the ball to move, whereas a gel pen will just glide. These are ballpoint pens, proper ballpoint pens. And usually when you first start them, they don't work. See, you have to roll them to get the pen to work. If you nearly always have to scribble with it, it's a ballpoint pen. If you don't have to scribble with it, or it just, another dead giveaway is if you start moving the ball and you get a little speck, a big chunk of ink has dried on the ball, that's usually a gel pen as well. So your Bic pens that you got, those are proper ballpoints. Frictions are gel pens. That's okay. It's still a good idea. It's still a really good idea, because now you can go in with a ballpoint pen and practice doing the ballpoint over the top. And then when it's dry, you can erase the friction. So it's not a bad idea at all. I wish I'd thought of it, because I've got pens I could have drawn with for friction. Anyway, I hope that's given you an idea of how to go about drawing the rest of these faces. I plan to draw the rest of these faces. These are going to be my fairy studies, because I think all of these girls would make awesome fairies. I just do. And I always draw, whenever I draw like mythical characters or fairy, I don't draw fairies very often, but you know, when I draw fantasy type characters, I nearly always go for white skin, red curly hair. So it's a good idea to try something different. I'm really looking forward to drawing this little girl. She's amazing. She's so fairy-like. She just needs wings. Seriously. And I could see this girl with big, like, feathered wings, like an angel. Couldn't you just see her with big white feathered wings against that black? Oh, gorgeous. So, have fun. That's lots of little bits to practice. And I hope that's taken some of the fear of sketching faces out of it for you, because you don't have to make them look beautiful. They don't have to be generically pretty. You can make them characterized and make them different, and they will still look good. This one looks a bit cartoony. I've overemphasized things. She looks a bit caricature, but I'm perfectly happy with this lady. I think she's awesome. Can't you just see her with, I can see her with like a big kind of hood, like an old crone. I think she'd be awesome as a crone. I'd love to draw her as a crone. And this girl, oh, she's just gorgeous. I love her, everything about her. I even love her outfit. I just, no need to change anything about her as far as I'm concerned. So I may or may not try doing the 100 faces thing, but I'm not going to do it in 10 days. That's ridiculous. That's never going to happen. 100 faces in 10 days is not going to happen. I did 11 over the weekend, and I've got another 14 to do here. I've done 5. I'm definitely going to turn that one into Marilyn Manson. It needs to happen. But I'm going to use these as my fairy studies, because I haven't drawn faces in a while, and I think it shows. The theory is there. The execution is a little off. I need some practice. No better way of practicing something than drawing 100 of it. Sorry about that. So, yeah, that's it. I will see you guys. What day is it even? Thursday. Saturday, we're doing Sage, I believe. Drawing Sage. Sunday, we've got a coffee chat for Midsummer Chronicles. We'll look at a little bit more of this. Hopefully I'll have some to show you, because I really haven't done an awful lot in my book yet. Been too busy. Yeah, that's it. Oh, what have you been up to, Cody? Cody's raving. Have you looked at Jane's book? Oh my God, Jane's book is gorgeous. If you're not following Jane on Instagram, you should be. Oh, you're doing bullet journal style, aren't you?
Yeah.
Your bullet journal for air. Is this your word things that you were doing?
Yeah, it's the same as Earth. It's just that one's air.
Yeah. So you did various different word association things for earth and air. What a great idea.
Yeah, I'm studying it with the Greek and Hebrew using the Bible Hub. So this is all the Hebrew in the Bible of the word air.
Oh, clever. I like it. Very nice. Jane's at work, so she's not still with us. Risha's got some. Let's have a look at Risha. Hang on. I can't see what it is yet. Here she is. Oh, she's been drawing fairies and trees. Oh, is that from a Rachman? A Rachman reference. A Rackham, Arthur Rackham reference.
It's from a book I have.
Oh, that's pretty.
It's
The elfin people. There's a lot of similarities between elves and fairies. Or not elves, but Tolkien elves, as opposed to little elves with pointy shoes. Well, that's beautiful. I like that. Dryad.
I traced the image.
Ah. Very good. I like it.
With, earth and air. As a starting image for the book.
I know it's not Midsummer Chronicles today, but you're all in the group. I did an earth collage. I went the other way with collages.
Tracing is actually a good way to get portrait faces.
It is a very good way to do portrait
and three-quarter
faces.
That's how I got three-quarter face down, is I traced a lot.
Yes.
A lot of Disney princesses have that, three-quarter face.
That's what you're aiming for, really, because you're not at this stage, or for what we're doing, we're not aiming to draw lifelike, beautiful representations of something. What we're aiming for is to be able to draw a pretty face, but not just any generic pretty face. We're trying to be a little bit different about them. And the key to being different is to use different reference photos. And as long as you know how to copy your reference photos, you can turn your faces into something really interesting. So I did Earth Magic, and then I've done my air one, and I've got pictures for this is my favorite. I'm very air. My Aquarian side is coming out in my air. I'm suddenly like, oh, I love air. Air's awesome. I struggled with the Earth bit, honestly. I really struggled with Earth because I have no Earth in my chart. I'm not an Earth person. Burgess has been finishing off her herbs by the look of it. Which one's that? Is that the basil or the sage?
This is actually the tomato plant.
Oh, tomato plant. Oh, cool.
And then when we were in Rome,
That explains why I couldn't figure out what it was.
Yeah, that's the tomato plant. And this is one of the plants. And I think this is, I can't remember which one this is, but we had all this rain here, like torrential rain, and they really, most of them really perked up. So,
yeah, we've had constant rain since last week, and everything is green, like hyper green.
Yeah, our grass.
You can't go out and enjoy it because it's still raining.
Yeah, our grass. Today's the first day I've actually seen the sun.
No, we're still raining. In fact, it's raining so much that Maddie won't go out and pee. I've had to get the poppy pads out because she won't go outside and pee because it's raining.
Yeah, we still got rain clouds, but the sun is trying. So when we were in Rome, I actually did. The pool wasn't open, and I went nature journaling and took photos of and then drew like the trees. This is
oh, that's good. I like that one.
And then I did, we saw doves and different birds in the trees. And
got rain in Belgium too. Yeah. I think that all of us are rain at the moment.
that, so I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, you're really getting into it, aren't you?
So I was having fun. So
Excellent.
now I just need to put them in my other one,
Yeah.
my actual sketchbook, because I took the little one. Had to pack little.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was excited though, because now I've got pictures of them too. So now I can
So
print.
now you can do individual leaves.
Right.
And individual berries and things like that in your other book, and just do loads and loads of sketches rather than just one plant and then look, I've done a lovely picture.
Yeah, I took a bunch of different kinds of pictures, and so I can actually put the pictures in. I can draw like individual things, and so I'm excited because this was a good way to practice. Like I did this when we got home, and it's been exciting.
Cool.
So I feel good about it. I know I need to get into the detail stuff now.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm glad I took the pictures.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with doing details from pictures. That's what I've been doing because it's too wet to go out. So I'm just looking outside and looking at what is out there and going, oh, look, I can see a dog rose bush. Okay, so I go on the internet and look for pictures of dog rose bushes, and then I draw from that because it's too wet to sit outside and do it. Rachel texted me earlier. She said, didn't it rain the last time you did a summer class? Umbrella, Ella.
Yeah, we had 4 inches of rain within less than an hour. We got caught in torrential downpours in Georgia and South Carolina. People were fully off the road because you could not see. It was horrible.
That's an interesting one, Risha. What's that? Is that like a dragon type, dryad type thing? Oh, a sylph. Like a sylph, silky?
Yeah, something like that.
She looks like she might be a
mermaid.
Yeah. They're kind of like a cross between a fairy and a mermaid, like feathery mermaids.
Yeah, I also found
Oh, she's cool.
Gothic.
A gothic elf, yeah. She looks like a hydra. No? What's the word? Lilith was supposed to be one. Harpy? No. The other one. Yeah, can't remember the word. She's very cool though. I like her. I like her bat wings.
Yeah.
Again, not a lot of difference between elves and fairies, unless you're talking about Santa's elves. But even Santa's elves are classed as fairies, apparently. Okay. Let's call it a day there then, shall we? Slightly longer session today, but that's okay. We missed one the other day. I'm going to be posting some more in the Midsummer Chronicles group because I'm been a bit behind with posting my stuff. But I have to do my stuff before I can post my stuff. So I will post some of my faces once I've done them. And you can see how I change them from being just the generic kind of sketchy faces like this to actually being something you might actually put in a drawing. You'll see the difference in them, hopefully. And I shall see you Saturday for drawing sage plants. What do you want to draw sage plants in? Because we've done pencil, we've done pen, we've done colour pencil, we've done gouache, which is basically the same as watercolour or acrylic. What should we do? What should we do sage in? Any particular requests? No? Yeah, we'll just play it by ear then. See what happens on the day. See what Romany fancy's doing on the day, shall we? It's always entertaining. All right. That's it then. Let's stop recording on the live stream and I will see you later. Oh, watercolor then pen over the top. Okay, why not? Sure. I like it. Let's do that.